All, this is Dr. Mobeen Sayed from drbeen.com. Welcome to one more show. Today, I wanted to go over the vaccine dose availability, the population of the US that is willing to be vaccinated, the population's groups that are at high risk, and then when can they be vaccinated and what will be the outcome. The reason for this research is really, I wanted to understand for myself as well, that will the vaccine actually help, because we know that not everyone is going to be ready to receive the vaccination. So if we don't receive the vaccination, will the population eventually reach a point that the pandemic finishes? So I spent majority of the day today to collect this data together. There were bits and pieces present in various parts on the internet, and I collected them together. I put them all in this description of the video with the links, and I wanted to then present them to you as well. So with this, hopefully you are doing good, and let us start. So this is the main question. The question is, will the pandemic end by the Q1, Q2 of 2020? The focus is on the US. So my apologies to the international audience that today I wanted to talk about the US and the vaccination here. If you are looking for an analysis for your geography, your country, let me know and I would talk about it. But today I wanted to look at the US together. So I hope you like this cartoon that the vaccines are going to help us kick the SARS-CoV-2 out. Now let's start the discussion. The sources for this data, I have an Excel sheet here. This Excel sheet has the data that I downloaded from Statistia, and this is the data by July of 2019. And again, the links are present in the description. Yeah, I was hoping to bring Luffy in today, but he was with me a few minutes ago and then he ran away. So the links, just very quickly, are tour to the links. This is drbeen.com. We have the year-end sale going, so if you would like to support us, you can buy the plans here. This is CDC's death tracker and the case tracker. For example, the cases today were 403,359 cases. And if I go to deaths, unfortunate, but this is what is happening. So if you see here, today 2,756 so far, and yesterday 3,444 deaths. So what I would like is, if you can keep in mind that we almost have daily cases which are in the range of let's look at the moving average, about 230-ish per day at this time. So keep that in mind, because we will use this number later on in our discussion. This is the US demography, and some of the data is present here as well that I took from here. This is the Statista. That is where I got the Excel sheet. This is the data here. What I wanted to do was, I didn't want to have just the male-female breakdown. So I downloaded this data sheet, and then I collected the numbers for various age ranges. So one part that is different from the vaccine schedule is that the data reported here is up to 19 years of age. So I could not get 56 up to 16 years of age data, or the numbers up to 18. So one inaccuracy in my analysis is that my data starts from 20 years and onwards. So if there are people who are below that and who are going to be vaccinated, those numbers are not accounted for. Here, this is a article which is CDC panel says health workers, nursing homes will get COVID vaccine first. But the important thing is that in the healthcare workers, especially in the nursing, there has been a survey in which the outcome was about 30% of the nurses simply refused to have the vaccine. Another 33% said they are still thinking about it. Although the final count is that about 68% of the healthcare workers are saying that they will be willing to receive the vaccination. Within this population, the 68% is almost near the herd immunity. So if they all become protected, and if this population was living alone on an island, then there would be no further spread of the virus. The problem is that the virus can still spread from other populations, for example, youngsters, to this population, but 68% are willing to get the vaccination. Then here is another article. This article shows, and this number is also important, that excuse me, excuse me, the number of deaths, 90% of the deaths that occurred in the US are in 50 plus. So that means it is important for us to keep an eye on vaccinating the folks who are 50 plus, because majority of the deaths are occurring there. So please keep this in mind as well. Then here is another article. So this article is what shows that 63% of healthcare, I said 68, so please correct, 63% of healthcare workers polled in recent months said they would get COVID-19 vaccine. This is another poll where 58% of Americans in general, they are willing to receive the vaccination. So although the healthcare authorities are saying that 70 to 80% of the people need to be vaccinated, I think that 60 and above is actually a very decent vaccination count as well. We also have to keep in mind that we have about 17, 18 million people who have already become infected, and unfortunately, more than 300,000 have died, and the rest have become recovered. And in theory, they do not need the vaccination because they are already part of the herd immunity. So that is another group that does not necessarily need the vaccination. Then this is another link here. This is showing the number of cases and deaths. So 17.5 million cases so far, and 740 deaths, unfortunately. This one, today we had this Operation Warp Speed's General Gustavo Perna, who said that I have failed to assess correctly for the number of doses needed per state. I think that is actually, these logistical issues would occur because nobody is actually seeing the future. So nobody can exactly say what needs to be done. So we just will have to figure out where we are falling short and then try to work with that. I'm going to close this tab because this video is going to just cause issues. Then here, this is one more article which says Moderna to supply 125 million doses. So what they are saying is that they would provide 125 million doses in Q1. So keep this in mind as well, because this is what we'll use. And they're saying is that about 20 million doses will be available. They had said within this December. However, it seems like by the first week of January is the final doses from Moderna and Pfizer. So 125 million doses. And then Moderna, US has actually asked them to produce another 100 million doses as well, which they are hoping that they would provide them by Q2, Q3. And then here is the Moderna's vaccine widen immunization effort. So this is more 100 million more doses. So if you see here, this one line is important, and that is Moderna expects to add 20 million doses of its vaccine to Pfizer's expected 25 million by the end of December. So read that as by the end of the first week of January. So we'll have 45 million doses available between the two companies. And then here, supply issue hampering Pfizer's provision. And number one, and number two, US has asked Pfizer to provide another 100 million doses. They have said they would try to do it by Q3, and US wants that by Q2. I think that with the number of doses that have been given, if we are playing our cards correctly, we would see a drastic reduction in death rate and in pandemic by Q1 near early Q2. This is another link. US could get additional Pfizer vaccines doses by summer. So these are the links. So let's now look at the discussion here. So US's population, July 2019, 328 million. 21 million healthcare workers. They are high risk because of their continued exposure, so they are going to get the vaccines first. That means for them, if they all get the vaccine, that would mean about 42 million doses. And that is the combined doses that Moderna and Pfizer are going to provide in the next couple of weeks. Majority of my friends who are working in hospitals or clinics, when I ask them, they have become vaccinated. Although I do not suspect that all 21 million will get vaccinated, there is a 30% for sure that they are saying we do not want to be vaccinated. So 62%. So about 12, 13 million will be vaccinated, which will mean about 25 million doses are needed. And please keep in mind that by end of January, we'll have 45 million doses. So imagine that 25 million are gone here. Then 50 plus, that is the most impacted group. And there are, in the US, we have 117 million people who are 50 plus. Again, the data is here. I have actually put the breakpoints here. This is up to 19 years. Then this is 50 and onwards. This is 65 and onwards. And I've done some calculations here. Then the nursing home residents, they are 3 million. Other than them, the folks who are 20 to 49, we have 129 million people there. And then lesser than 19 and lesser, 81 million people. So out of 328, that is the basic breakdown. Now, here is what is important. Let me actually go to the next slide first, and then I'll go back to the first one. If you see here, healthcare workers need to be vaccinated first because they are high risk. The 50 plus need to be vaccinated first as well because 90% of deaths are occurring in this group. So that means if you take this 117 million and vaccinate them all, let's say in theory, vaccinate them all, then you would prevent 90% of deaths. And again, I understand that not all of them are going to get vaccinated, and 58% say that they will be. So about 60%, 60 million, 65 million will actually get vaccinated, which may be okay for the herd immunity within that group. But because that group is not living on an island by itself, they are exposed to the other groups, that is lower ages, they having herd immunity in them is not sufficient to have them all protected. So those who will not get vaccination in this group would stay at the high risk. And then nursing home residents, they are actually just 3 million. Some references said 6 million. So let's say 3 to 6 million. But the death rate is very high in them. 25% of the deaths that have occurred are in this group. So if you see here, the count is really low, but the death rate is very high. So keeping this in mind, what do we need to do? And I'm going to go back to this one for a second. I think that is what we just talked about. Here, what is important is to notice 63% of the healthcare workers say they are willing to be vaccinated. 58% of the general population is saying that they are willing to be vaccinated. So if we just take it on its face value and we say, fine, 60% will become vaccinated. 20 million, 17, 18 million have already become infected and recovered. This may be sufficient to actually bring the R naught down to 1, which is a stable state, and that might actually stop the pandemic. So I am very, very hopeful that even with those folks who do not want to be vaccinated, I think even then we would reach a point by end of quarter 1 where we would have the pandemic stalled and slowed down sufficiently that we would be comfortable that the number of cases and death rate has reduced drastically. Now, how many people are there then? 21 million. So if you see here, this area, 21 million healthcare workers, 3 million nursing home residents, so 24 million folks here, which means 48 million doses. But once again, as I said, all healthcare workers are not willing to get the dose, and they are able to say that I do not want to be vaccinated. I have some friends who said that I have refused at this time. So what I do not know is that will they be mandated later on? But for the time being, they've said no. So 21 million and 3 million, 24 million, and then 82 million is the 70%. I did not use the 58%. Instead, I used the number 70%. 70% of the 50 plus folks. So that is 70% of 117 million. So these folks need to be vaccinated. I would argue that all 117 50 plus need to be vaccinated, plus all healthcare worker, plus all nursing home residents. But I have taken the percentages down. Then keep in mind that 17 million have already become infected. So if we take this number, the total new vaccinations needed are 106 million people. That is about 70% from 50 plus, 21 million from the healthcare workers, 3 million from the nursing home resident. That means we need 212 million doses. And between Moderna and Pfizer, they are providing 45 million doses by the end of January 1. And then by end of quarter 1, they are saying that they would have 200 million more doses, 100 million between each of them. Although, although Pfizer has said a few months, they have not said end of Q1 or end of Q2. For the initial 100 million doses, they have used the word a few months. So whatever that means, the next 100 million they are promising by the end of Q3. So if that happens, then we can actually have the whole next year going on with the pandemic, but at a slower and slower and slower rate. However, if we get 100 million from Pfizer in the Q1, 100 million from Moderna in the Q1, and 45 million already now, then we actually reach this point of 212 million doses needed, and 90% deaths would actually be reduced. That is a huge deal. That means with the current commitment, by the end of Q1, the pandemic in the US should become just a nuisance, just a tiny problem, instead of the way it is raging right now. I have some consideration, so I know that there would be some question that is it really going to be possible or not. So I'll look at the considerations in a second. Now, the vaccine commitments are the following. Pfizer and Moderna by the first week of January, 25 and 20 million, 45 million total. And then we need 2 doses per person. I do not know if they are going to take the 45 million and then inject the first dose and then wait for a month for more supply to come in. If that is what happens, then 45 million people will become injected by the first week of January or second week of January. If they are going to keep them for 2 doses for same people, which I think will not happen, then we would have 22. So I think that from 22.5 million people to 45 million people by the middle of January would have been given the first dose. And they are the high risk people as well. So death rate would actually start dropping. Will it drop to the 0 death rate in this group? No, remember that after the first dose, getting COVID is 50%. So it is not 95% effective after the first dose. So their risk stays high. It is after the 14 days of the second dose that their risk will drop down to 0 or very tiny. Now, by the end of Q1, 100 million more doses by Moderna, 100 million more doses by Pfizer, minimum population 70% of 117 million. This is the 50 plus population, 82 million that needs to be dosed, and dosage needed are 164 million. So we would actually be okay. However, the problem is that this group, let's say 40% of the nurses who did not get vaccinated, and let's say another 42% of the general population that did not get vaccinated because they don't want to. They are living with other population that is 100% not vaccinated yet, and that is people below the age of 50. And when those people would come in contact with this group, they would continue to transmit infection to this group, and because they are at high risk, there would still be problems. Of course, the number of cases will drop. Of course, the death rate or number of deaths would drop as well, but it would not go down to zero because of not getting vaccinated. So this still, the risk of spread from the other ages to these groups is possible. So what are the other ages? So if you see how many people would stay at risk in 50 plus, so there are 117 million people who are 50 plus. 80 million will probably get vaccinated, 58% or 70% actually. Then 37 million will be still at risk. If we take 58% or 60%, then more than 37, probably 40 million people would still stay at risk of the infection. Now, considering the best course, we will almost have no deaths in this group. Again, that is considering that majority becomes vaccinated. Disease will only cause mild symptoms. So the remaining group, the youngsters, are going to be experiencing mild symptoms, and the death rate is low in them. And here is the interesting thing. Remember when the Pfizer and Moderna, when they came back, they said, well, we had some infections as well in the vaccinated group. So I had taken their percentages as well. For example, Moderna had said 5 infection when the vaccinated group size was 13,300 something. And Pfizer had said 8 infection in 18,000 people who got vaccinated. So I took their percentages and then I multiplied them with this vaccination group. So that will mean 2 months after the vaccination, second dose of the 14 days of the second dose, and 2 months after, there will be 60,000 to 100,000 cases that will occur in the vaccinated group. But now please compare this. This is the number of cases from, let's say, February to 2 more months, February, March, April, 60,000 to 100,000 cases, and now compare them to just like 230,000 cases on daily basis. So that is the kind of difference that would appear, that instead of having, so here in half a day, we get 100,000 cases today. And now we will have 100,000 cases in 2 to 3 months after these folks are vaccinated. And the second thing which is important is from the trial data, their chances of becoming severe will be almost nil. So that is all a good news if it works out. So now let's see what are some considerations, what are some issues that may occur. Number one, the biggest one is the virus mutation. And why is that important? So we have a concept of selection pressure. What that means is that the virus is right now mutating in all of us. Whoever gets the virus, there is some change in the virus that happens in their body. I've discussed it many times. Sometimes the changes are so drastic that that virus becomes disabled and cannot actually propagate any further, so it dies there. And sometimes there may be a virus that learns to escape our body's defense and becomes competent against that defense, and then escapes that person and goes to other people and starts then going forward from there. That is the case that we are seeing with UK right now. So UK's new strain that they're seeing is more rapidly um propagating. 70% of the new cases in London are actually with this new strain, although this selection pressure has also done something good to the virus, and that is it has become more adapted to us. Normally, a virus that is spreading faster usually means it is less lethal because it caused us less symptoms. We went out and kept doing our daily work with some nuisance and unknowingly kept transmitting it. So normally when the viruses start spreading faster, that means they have become more adapted to us. When the virus do not spread that fast, then they are more lethal. Although in case of SARS-CoV-2, you are seeing that it is spreading fast and it is lethal as well. So virus mutation is an issue that can occur. And the selection pressure would be that once we have vaccinated a lots of people, virus will have to figure out, or there will be copies of the viruses that may escape the antibodies that are produced. And they would be, imagine now, we would have 100 million people who are vaccinated. And now the virus is in their body trying to figure out. So there are 100 million labs for the virus to figure out how to change. And so maybe there is one or two strains that do get changed and then they start propagating. The chances are less, but that is a very possible thing in theory. And we are seeing that in UK already. So that is one consideration. Second is increased case rate in vaccinated. So it is possible that in the trial, let's say we are seeing 5 people got COVID out of 113,000 who were vaccinated. Maybe when we actually vaccinate the larger population, that percentage comes out to be more. So that is possible. Similarly, increased death rate in vaccinated. Not increase compared to current death rate, but increase compared to the trials reporting. For example, in Moderna's case, they said no deaths at all. Maybe there would be deaths that would occur in vaccinated group as well because of severe COVID. Pfizer said 1 death, and maybe there would be a greater rate. So we do not know that part yet. And then, as you're seeing that Pfizer's vaccine has some allergic reactions, who knows that as the more people are vaccinated, there is more transverse myelitis, so there is more Bell's palsy, or there is more, the allergic reactions, or something else that we are not aware of yet. And that might cause increased refusal. So it may be that today, let's say 58% of the people are saying, fine, I'll get vaccinated. And then they see others getting vaccinated and the news come in that here are the issues going on. Maybe that rate drops and the vaccination program does not reach to the point to help us with the herd immunity. So that is a possible failure. It can be flipped as well, that people who are getting vaccinated are now better and they are taking care of their daily works better and they are protected, and more people say, all right, fine, I see the others to be doing okay and I want to get the vaccine as well. So the numbers can go both ways depending upon how the news and what is the events that occur with the vaccination. Then the breakdown in logistics. It is possible, just like Pfizer is having problems delivering the vaccine because of the cold storage and the cold chain requirement. So who knows what other logistical breakdown, just like I showed you that that link where our person from the Operation Warp Speed said that, hey, I failed, I did not assess correctly. So there are going to be more such issues as well. They're going to be inevitable. So breakdown in logistics will happen. Trial data inaccuracy in phase 4 or production. So that is the same thing as I talked up here, that it is possible that the actual production vaccination comes out to be behaving differently in terms of number of cases and number of deaths than what the trial data showed. I think there is going to be a difference. And then protection waning rapidly. And you know that I have always talked about it, that once we have the protection, it would go on for 2 to 3 years. However, who knows, something jumps out of minks once again and causes us a problem, or just like another strain appears. So protection may wane rapidly because we have some mutations. Will it happen? Don't know. I hope and I pray that this vaccine is sufficient to bring the population to a herd immunity at least, and the virus just does not know many more people to go to, and it dies. And finally, herd immunity in 50 plus will not protect them from other age groups who do not have immunity yet, and um, they would need 200. And so if we take other age groups and bring them to herd immunity levels as well, then we will need another 295 million doses. And that means what? That is this group. That is these two groups. So younger than 19, maybe we do not even know how to vaccinate them. But I think that anybody who is type 1 diabetic or severely obese or cardiovascular issues, even if they're younger, they should consider if they can be vaccinated. And then this 129 million group will need to be brought into the herd immunity level, so that the whole America is at herd immunity level. For that, we would need more than 200 million doses. So this is the analysis that I thought was interesting for us to see. My conclusion is that if everything went as we are thinking now, not knowing what happens in the future, negative or positive, if this is what happened as we are planning now, by the end of Q1, we would not have pandemic as we know it today. It will have stalled, it would have reduced, the death rate in old age would have reduced, nursing homes would have reduced, 50 plus would have reduced, and we would actually be in a much, much better place. So this is what we have for today. Tomorrow is my off. I'm going to just look at the commentary for a second and then stop. Please like, subscribe, and share. There is a link for donations and a link for buying me coffee as well in the description. So it is actually funny. Some folks bought me coffee yesterday, and I was looking at that and saying, oh, I got some coffee. So if you would like, you can buy me some coffee as well. Let's see comments. Seven Angel says, I'm concerned about the enhanced disease as a result of the vaccine. Do we know what cells the mRNA goes into? As someone with autoimmune disease, this concerns me, and I haven't seen info on it. So we have been talking about it. Number one, enhanced antibody-dependent enhancement is a theoretical possibility. There has not been any report so far in the trial data. That doesn't mean that I can look at you and say it would not happen to you or somebody else or to me. We are all different. But in the trial data, this did not happen. That is one. Secondly, we know which cells it goes into. It goes into the muscle cells. It is injected in the deltoid. It goes into the muscle cells and the local immune cells, which are going to be macrophages, dendritic cells, and possibly neutrophils. There are no other cells that are going to pick it up. Can it actually go into the blood and go to the blood-brain barrier? That is a theoretical discussion, but it's not possible. If that would have been happening, these 80,000-90,000 people who were vaccinated, they would have had a lot of issues. That is the same thing for pregnancy as well. I repeat it every day, and then I get some comment back in the YouTube as well. There were people who became pregnant after receiving the first dose. So pregnancy and these issues are not there. Vincent Telfer says, do you think that this vaccine approach will lead to curing cancer or other viruses? Absolutely. And other viruses for sure, because now there will be more mRNA vaccines. And the cancer, because Moderna was originally targeting their work for cancers. So now as they will become richer, because of the vaccine that they're selling, I think that they would be able to expand their technology more towards cancers as well. So I suspect that science will become science did become advanced in this 1 year for 10 years leap. Uh, I think that ignorance advanced as well. The number of myths and the rumors and the deliberate misinformation is, I cannot even imagine that how bad it is. Eric the dog says, does virus mutation depends on countries' general health comorbidities? Yes, so every country has a different way of the virus mutating in them. And I suspect that it is something to do with the nutritional status, the lifestyle, the health style, and the general comorbidities. You're absolutely correct. Somebody made a comment yesterday that how do you know that the vaccine will not cause cancer? It is going to slowly continue to cause cancer over the years. You do not know today, but next year or 2 years later, you would see there is cancer. Um, Vaccine is not going to go and live in our body that long. Vaccine is injected now. Within few minutes, it is going to be picked up by our monocytes and macrophages and dendritic cells and the muscle cells. Then the cells will be trained, immune system cells will be trained to recognize the virus, and those cells will then go to sleep. They will become memory cells. Vaccine is gone, it is eliminated within minutes. I shouldn't say within minutes. Sometimes immune system would take about a day to ramp up, but it is taken up by the muscles within minutes. It's not going to live there for years to cause cancer. And immune system's behavior of becoming trained against a virus does not cause cancer. If that was the case, all the people who are getting COVID-19 infection will develop cancer because they're getting the same spike protein that the vaccine would bring in. Vaccine is not bringing in anything extra. It is the messenger RNA, a lipid particle, and lipid particle is made up of the lipids that are already in our body. For example, surfactant and other. It has some pH balancing things that are already in our body. And then it has sucrose in it, which is already in our body. In this vaccine, there is no preservative, there is no fetal tissue, there is no adjuvants. So I do not know why people keep saying that, well, 10 years later, there will be cancer. At least in theory, from the technical part of the vaccine, it is not possible. If the vaccine is going to cause the cancer, it would cause right away. Cool. So there is a question here. Will we need another vaccine for the new strain of the virus? So look, they are now studying the virus in the UK. My opinion, my suspicion is that the virus is more rapidly spreading. That means it is less lethal and we'll probably have to do nothing about it. But let's say there is a similarly lethal version of the virus that has changed its spike protein in a way that the current training of the immune system and the antibodies production is not sufficient to bind with it. So for example, let's say the spike protein is like this and we have made antibodies like this to bind, and then the virus learned to spread this spike protein like this. Now we cannot bind with it. Then we would have to figure out a new vaccine that can figure out how to catch this. So just like flu vaccines. But so far, that is not the case. Good question. So let's see. There's one more question. Shahida says, if the first dose is halved, which is well effective, greater than 66%, instead of 50% people can be fully vaccinated. So they have not tested it. And so because they have not tested it, there may not actually be enough immunity created. And we might actually end up wasting the vaccine that we have just given instead of helping more. Cher says, I'm thrilled my husband got his vaccine last night, mild side effects. Many of my colleagues, my friends who are working, they are vaccinated. They're sending me emails that, hey, I got vaccinated. JTJ says, we need the vaccine, but I prefer a non-mRNA type of vaccine. That is interesting, JTJ, because so far what I'm seeing, people are more leaning towards mRNA because of the fetal tissue and adenovirus kind of things in traditional vaccines. But you're correct in this way that traditional vaccines, for example, Oxford's vaccine or AstraZeneca's vaccine, they have been used, that technology has been used in other vaccines for a long time. However, it is interesting that they still do not know what is exactly the right dose to use to have right effectivity. Remember, AstraZeneca said 62% effectivity and 90% effectivity, and then combined 70% effectivity. So there is something there. Cool. So there's a question, Dr. Saab, if we get vaccine from CanSino trial in Pakistan, will it be considered safe, or we wait for Pfizer, Moderna? What are your views? So the funny thing is that these vaccines, so CanSino is Canada and China working together, and then Sinovac is China. The funny thing is I do not find enough data about them. I have scoured the web a lot to try to find the data. There is not much data. So without data for me to say it is good or bad, I cannot. Although I know that many of my friends have received CanSino and they are fine. So I just from hearsay I can say it is fine, but from data point of view, I cannot. A Simple Garden says, are we learning more about autoimmune diseases with this disease? I'm hoping for some other extra knowledge to help or be gained with immune issues. I think majority of these things were known. There are some more things that are coming to light. For example, the AI's involvement to figure out how to manage the virus, or how to figure out the cells that have become dysregulated, or figuring out what are the combinations of biomarkers that become bad. So I think that there would be spillover of this knowledge into the other areas of autoimmune diseases. Especially, please realize that AI's function would actually increase. So we would see reduction in autoimmune diseases or better control as a result of this work. Cool. So there is a question here from Anthony. Anthony says, have you heard of Gilead's antiviral GS441524, cousin of remdesivir, but safer, taken orally, cures feline infectious peritonitis, cat coronavirus, infect monocytes, curious for long haulers? I have not. Anthony, is it possible if you can tweet at me the link and I can go check it out? My Twitter is at drbeen_medical. So hopefully that would work. So guys, so once again, please like, subscribe, and share. Tomorrow is my off. I would see you all on Monday. Stay safe and happy and healthy. Stay relaxed. I think we are coming towards the end of the pandemic, and just hang in there. Keep your guard up. And if you wanted to support my work, there are links in the description to do that. Thank you. Bye-bye.